We're unmuted. Here we go. Go live. This is it. We're live. Hey,
Hello.
we are live. There's no music. Not going to make you wait. Apologies for the delay. It's me and Blunty here for the FPV news. No intro music today. I already had to wait an extra 6 minutes. Not going to make you wait another 4 minutes after that, no matter how good the intro music is. I'm very happy to be here with you. We hope our levels are correct and everything. We were, I don't know what happened. We still don't know what happened. DJI tried to, somebody tried to shut us down, Blunty. They couldn't stand for us to tell the truth.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but I guess we'll find out. Hopefully everything works out and we can have the show. So.
All right, I'm going to put the titles out of there. No titles today. We're just going to have a free form. Hang on. Let's turn off the news title. News center bar. No, not that. Lower scroll. Oh, it's the whole thing. All right, there we go. Right. We are very happy to be with you today because it is a very, very newsworthy day with a lot of news about the new DJI system and the new DJI. Sorry, I've really done it now, Blunty.
Yeah, you're going to confuse everybody.
I'm not just going to confuse everybody, but they're going to assume that was not just like I'm scattered because we just spent the last 10 minutes trying to fix your internet while we were getting ready for the live stream. And they're going to assume that was like a Freudian slip and I'm revealing stuff that I'm not. The new Fat Shark goggles. And we're going to spend most of today talking about those, but we have a couple other items, including a discussion of the HD0 goggles, which also dropped. Well, they didn't drop. There was some news about them, and we definitely think that also needs to be talked about. Let me thank you guys for being here as well. We have 563 concurrent viewers, so we may as well get straight into it. Before we get straight into it, though, we always start the stream with public service announcements, things that you need to know that might affect you. And we have one today that is significant enough. We're going to get it out of the way real quick, but you need to know about it, because it could literally destroy the gyro on your flight controller if you're running Betaflight, which is kind of a big deal. So, Blunty, let's just hit this real quick, and then we'll get on to the coverage of the Fat Sharks stuff. Public service announcement.
Yeah, so Betaflight 4.3 RC6. If you're using it, if you're planning to use it, you should not. If you have an ICM 20689 gyro, so the 2689 20689 ICM gyro has a problem where it's basically bricking itself because of some commands that get sent to it if you're running RC6 or Betaflight. A couple of people have reported this doesn't happen, but a lot of users have been reporting this. So yeah, if you got this going on, please don't flash.
Yeah, so look up what gyro you have on your flight controller, and if it's the 20689, do not flash RC6. This is a big deal because, like, normally you flash an RC and you have a problem and you just flash back to an older RC. But something is happening with this firmware that changes something inside the gyro that, just bricks the gyro, and then they're not 100% sure how to get it back. So essentially it kills your flight controller.
Yeah, they're trying to talk to TDK because TDK and FinSense makes these, and they're trying to get a case going with TDK to find out like a proper way to fix them if they're bricked. Hopefully there is some way, but in testing, one of them was fixable, and then the same command did not seem to fix the other one. So hopefully they can recover some of these at some later point, but currently, do not flash this.
If you've already flashed RC6 and it hasn't happened to you, are you safe? Do we know?
I don't know that we know that. I believe that when you flash, it all happens, but I don't know when those commands are written, so I can't tell you that.
Darwin FPV Tiny Ape has that gyro. The chat is pointing out.
I would probably not run RC6 with that gyro, even if I'm already running it. I would probably flash away from it, just in case some weird stuff happens. Like, you don't want to break a gyro.
So didn't RC5 have a big issue as well? What should people go back to?
At this point, I think RC4 and RC5. I think RC4 and RC5 has a GPS rescue bug. RC3 had a failsafe bug with Crossfire V3. I think that's
cool.
Correct. And then RC2 and RC1 had scheduler issues. I believe that's correct.
So there really isn't a perfectly.
4.2.11 sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, we got that PSA out of the way. Is what it is.
Yes.
And now we will begin our much-awaited coverage of the DJI. Gosh dang it, the DJI FPV goggles is what I was about to say. I don't know what's going on with me. I'm the Fat Shark Goggles. It's just I say DJI goggles so much. It's just part of my brain. And the place we're going to start is we're going to start with just a discussion and reaction to the goggles themselves. Shut up. What is happening? Stop with that. Stop with that. Sorry, got some music playing. We're going to start with just a discussion of the goggles themselves and a reaction to the goggles themselves. And then we're going to talk about like the controversy over like who makes the goggles and who's behind them.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's pretend that there was no controversy and someone just released this goggle. What is it and what do we think of it? Blunty?
Yeah. So, this is the Fat Shark Dominator goggle. We've heard the Fat Shark Dominator name before. Dominator was the name for the old HD goggles, or what they called HD goggles.
Which by the way, big mistake. Huge mistake. Look.
100% agree.
Fat Shark Dominator. Oh, okay. Well, actually, it's starting to catch up. Okay, it's starting to catch up. 3 days ago when I did this, all of the results were for the old Dominator goggle. And this one is even called the Dominator HD. It's the Dominator HD. No. Like still, okay, it's caught up now. We got the new goggles now. They're catching up. It's so distracting.
Unfortunately, Google I don't think is indexed yet. If you type in Fat Shark Dominator, I think in Google it'll still go to the old one. But yeah, hopefully they'll get that figured out. I'm not sure why they picked the same name. Hopefully they feel like there was a good reason for that. But yeah, Fat Shark Dominator system. So it's an HD system, a digital HD system with variable latency. And they're calling it 20. It looks like 22 millisecond minimum latency is what we saw in the videos.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1080p screens with 100 hertz refresh rate. Mm-hmm. And then 4 antennas. I mean, it's a lot of things, we've heard before, basically. And I think, that's why a lot of people think it sounds similar to DJI. Because when you look at the specs, when you listen to what it is, what other, variable latency HD system do we have? Digital HD system.
Right.
It's DJI.
I got to say, so if you told me that there was a goggle with a video link similar to DJI, with slightly lower latency, with the ability to do 1080p over the air, with support for Betaflight MSP DisplayPort, I would say, and it's smaller and lighter than the DJI goggles. I would say this is everything I wanted from like the next. This is everything we've been asking DJI for 3 years, 2 years, however long it's been out. And I would say thank you. This is the best product I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would agree. If it's from DJI, I would 100% agree with that. I think like the problem. I think like the concern is that it's from somebody who's never.
Great. What in the flippity flip is going on? Hello, I'm here.
I can hear you sort of like you're like a robot. Hello?
Coming back, I guess. Why am I having dropped frames now? The fuck?
Maybe it was just your download before that was happening.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
They're starting to come back, I think.
I'm still showing a ton of dropped frames. I can't effing believe this is the time when this is happening.
Yeah, I know. Weeks and weeks and weeks. No problem.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't know. Should I restart my router now?
I mean, at this point, maybe, yeah.
12% dropped frames. 0% dropped frames. Am I back? Am I back?
Hello?
I'm back. I can hear you. I'm showing 0% dropped frames at this moment. Let's see if it holds. Great. This is perfect.
Right.
This is really great. This is live streaming perfection. It's not OneDrive, I assure you. All right, I'm back. I don't know what that was. They don't want this. They don't want us talking about this system, folks. No, I'm joking.
Trying to keep us down.
That's a joke. That's just a joke. I'm not a conspiracy
Somebody on
theorist.
Discord said, put it on your VPN so they can't find it.
Okay, we're going to keep going. So Drew said you come out Thursday, you try this product, you make a video about it Thursday, you release it Monday, and you get the jump on all the big news. And I was like, cool. And he was like, it's here's what it is. And he told us the description of the product. And I was like, amazing. And we got there, and like the DVR, he was like, well, the DVR doesn't work. And I was like, oh, interesting. The DVR doesn't work. So we're going to have to use video out, HDMI out. And we got there and we started trying it. And it's like, hold on, we got to power cycle it. It's a little glitchy. And then it's like, oh, well, we can't do 1080p video out because the video out is, and the video is a tiny bit stuttery because they just started integrating the Betaflight OSD. And it became pretty clear that on paper, this was a really promising thing, but it wasn't really finished yet. And we're going to talk more about that when we get to the section of this where we're like, well, should you buy it? Should you pre-order it? We're not doing a review per se, but we'll cover that kind of from a newsy perspective. Yeah. So I think that this has a lot of promise if it can deliver on the exact specs. And I think if this was like the next DJI goggle, people would say everybody loved it. Everybody would love it. Am I wrong? And chat, you could tell me too. I mean,
yeah, I think that's true. I think I think the problem is, there's just so many unknowns, right? There's so many questions, and there were so many issues, like we saw even in just the video coverage that we, like me as someone also watching all the video coverage, I know you were there, but I saw the same thing. You could see and it was like some of the people were saying, oh, it's because HDMI out has the extra stuttering. And, Bubby was talking about having trouble seeing, and other people were talking about seeing the stuttering. And then there was also some framing. The latency was jumping weirdly. Like maybe that was OSD update issues, but we could see 22 to 31. There's a lot of those things where people were questioning. And that's not stuff you want to question when somebody's talking about releasing a goggle in a month or two, right?
Especially because the release is in June. Which is at a maximum 6 weeks away.
Yeah, and people and that's something we'll get to later to confirm that. But yeah, I think that's been a little bit of confusion about when this is going to release, and they are still saying June. So
yeah, well, Fat Shark is saying June. Yeah. So some people are disappointed that it's not fixed latency like HD0. I think a lot of people are going to be happy. The people who are happy with DJI, but want a little bit more from DJI, I think are going to be happy with this product if it can deliver the kind of reliability and quality that DJI, because that's something DJI is good at. And what we saw at Rampage, and I said this in my video, it's basically got a long way to go before it's a fully finished product. And to do that before a June release is extremely ambitious, to say the least. I mean, if they had a finished firmware today, feature complete, and all they had to do was bug test it before June, I would be like, ooh, that's pretty tight. I hope you don't find any big bugs.
Yeah,
but they're not even feature complete.
Yeah, we know that the features aren't done, or there's bugs with the features. Yeah, whatever exactly is happening. But yeah, I think I'm on the same page you are, for sure. I think, and a lot of the community, I think, is in the same place. Like, if what we saw was something magical and amazing and all the things we asked for, then it would be a lot better. But instead, what we saw was a lot of questions and a lot of confusion, and then a lot of not delivering on hopefully what we expected to see in a preview event.
Yeah. So. Okay. So that's the goggles. I mean, that's 5S voltage input.
Yeah, I don't
wish it was 6S.
Know how that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. People are other newsworthy things about the system before we then talk about the controversy. Not compatible with existing DJI systems, for those who are wondering. I mean, it looks a lot like DJI. Maybe it's compatible. It is not. Greg and Drew and I were sitting around the Rampage build room, and someone asked about this. And Greg and Drew's response was basically the gist of it was that the technology theoretically could be made compatible, but Drew was like, not going to happen. Unlikely was kind of his words, as if from a business perspective, it wasn't going to happen. What else?
Also, some other things. Yeah. I know some other things you mentioned. I wanted to at least address. You did a longer form interview that you released on your channel with Greg. And in that, he said a couple things that I thought were interesting, and they kind of lead us into kind of talking about Fat Shark's involvement and kind of getting into the guts of like.
Let's say that for a second. I want to get the sort of base stuff out of the way before we transition. FOV, there's a question in the chat. Field of view, 46-degree field of view, 16:9 screen. It is extremely large and immersive. There was a little bit of issue. I had a little bit of issue getting the screen centered up and getting them in focus edge to edge. I do have a bad glasses prescription. They have adjustable diopter. I was able to get them in focus. So, big screen though, very big, very immersive. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so is that the goggles? Have we missed anything? I don't know. I don't think so. So then the questions started to come out. And in order to sort of bring people up to speed on the controversy, I think I'm going to try to recap the situation, and then we'll talk about the evidence and our beliefs and so forth. And the situation is that the goggle comes out. Fat Shark says it's a new goggle that they have developed. They release the goggle, and like within an hour after, they say that they have this technical partner who developed the RF system. Fat Shark makes goggles. They don't make radio systems, and they have this partner. They won't say who the partner is. The partner may not want to be public facing. And everybody's like, clearly the partner's DJI. Your system looks just like DJI. It's got same error messages. And shortly after the goggle is released, a company named walksnail, a website goes up with the Avatar HD goggle. And it looks just like the new Fat Shark goggle. And then people started wondering, is Fat Shark actually making this goggle, or is Walksnail making this goggle and Fat Shark is just white labeling it, as is sometimes done in electronics? And then Flywoo sends out a pre-order page with the Avatar goggle, the Walksnail Avatar. And then people started suggesting that Walksnail and caddx were the same company, and then the whole internet blew up with a whole bunch of questions. And you and I have spent basically the whole weekend talking to people, both on the record and off the record. And I'm not going to ask you to believe anything that I believe because of off the record stuff. You should use evidence that you can see. I do believe some things that I believe in part due to off the record stuff, but since I can't share that with you, I'm not, you may or may not agree with me. But we've also got as much public and on the record stuff as we can to try and make sense of this. So, where should we start, Blunty?
Okay. I figured the first place we could start is just kind of lead in. Let's look at. I figured we could talk about your interview with Greg real quick, and we could just talk about the fact that I thought it was interesting leading into this. That his point of view was he thinks currently over 50% of pilots fly digital. People ask why there's no analog in this goggle, and I think his point of view of why there's no analog in this goggle is because they do not believe analog will be around for much longer for most pilots. They believe most pilots will be flying digital because that's the better link for them, and because of that, they are deciding to go digital only with this, right?
Yeah, and Greg's position was, why don't you even have an AV input? And it's similar to people begging Fat Shark for the improved DVR, and they're like, well, do you really need that? And kind of arguing with their own customers. He was like, well, how many people don't already have a set of analog goggles? And I'm like, maybe that's true, although it's not 100% true. People will be newly getting into the hobby, but people also don't want to carry around a second set of goggles. So,
yeah, if you show this comment real quick, I think some context here is from this this comment here from Greg. This was back when HD0 was launching on their YouTube channel. We showed this back when it happened, and basically somebody made a comment about how they didn't, they weren't super excited about the HD0 and all that. And this is pretty good context, I think. Basically, he says, gold star for your hypocritical comment. The reason your analog performs so well today is due to companies like Fat Shark investing in and improving FPV technology over the last 10 years. Same thing I'm going to do to digital and leave analog behind. So I think even at this time, this was over a year ago, back when they were working with HD0, it was the same plan. We're going to do as much as we can to kick analog out the door and build a digital feature for our goggles. And whether you want to be aboard or not, that's what we're going to do. And it seems like that's the vision that they're pushing forward today by choosing not to do these things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So analog is out. Then that's, some people aren't going to like that, but they're leaning into the future. So be it. Fat Fat Shark said, Greg said they had been working on the goggle for 2 years, 2 years, which some people were really surprised. They were like, how can that be true? I think there was some confusion that Fat Shark was working on the goggle. Fat Shark has been developing this goggle. That's what they do, is they make goggles. So they were, he was probably already sketching designs for this goggle, on napkins, not knowing what system would go in it. And I think we can assume that HD0 might have gone in this goggle if that relationship had gone forward, but it didn't. One of the things... Yeah,
that's what it seemed like all the updates we were getting were, because they were asking about features for the premium goggle. They kept referring to a premium goggle for HD0.
Right.
And then, it seemed to die, and then we got this.
When the Scout, I was like, well, if you had this goggle in your back pocket, why wasn't the Scout this goggle? And Drew said his read on it was that they were the Scout was kind of a test toe in the water, and they didn't want to blow their great goggle. And they had always said a new premium goggle with HD0 built in is coming, but they just reused the Scout shell, for that sort of public beta, if you will. So then when the HD0 thing fell apart, they came up with this partnership, and that's what this was. One of the questions people are asking is whether Fat Shark actually made this goggle, and there is one component of this goggle that I think absolutely says that they did. Should we save that for the what is Fat Shark's involvement section of the video, Blunty?
Well, yeah, I think we can kind of roll into that. Maybe let's just show. So, like you said, this goggle came out. They said, hey, we've got a third party. They've been in the industry for a long time. They know their shit. They know what's going on. And they didn't say who it was. But today, we got an official announcement, even though we all figured it out, that walksnail is officially a partner with Fat Shark. And in addition to that, basically they say Fat Shark or walksnail is responsible for creating the first receivers and transmitters for this new 1080p FPV system. The Fat Shark Dominator is the first goggle to fully integrate walksnail's receiver unit. So,
yes. So there's some sort of read between the lines here, which is that this is not if you look at the Immersion RC partnership between Fat Shark and Immersion RC. Immersion RC made the Fat Shark receiver modules, and for a long time, they did not make any third-party receiver modules for anybody else. Fat Shark and Immersion RC were, in a sense, sister companies, and it sort of joined at the hip. And then they separated, and Immersion RC made the Rapid Fire, which is a third-party module. In this case, it does not feel like there is that sister company relationship between walksnail and Fat Shark. One of the things Greg said in the interview jumped out at me. He said, we're very lucky to be part of the launch. Yeah. Which if you were launching a product that you were driving, you wouldn't say we're lucky to be part of the launch. You would be the launch.
Yeah, and my read on this.
Yeah.
My read on that is basically we had this goggle shell. HD0 did not seem like it was worth putting in this goggle shell. And then we found out walksnail had this system, and they were like, yeah, let's use your goggle shell. And we were like, thank God, because we need an HD system, and we need somewhere to put this goggle, and they need a goggle shell. So we're happy that we can be part of it. I mean, that's definitely what it seems like, right?
And there are people who wondered whether this system coming along is why Fat Shark left HD0. And I will say, I personally don't think the timing works. That the story I've heard, which I believe, is that HD0 wanted to manufacture their own hardware for their own reasons, and Fat Shark wanted HD0 to manufacture hardware for Fat Shark. And when Carl released whatever that first VTX was, I don't remember which one it was, separate from Fat Shark, that was like when Greg was like, okay, well, we can't work together. And that was when the fire sale on VRXs came through. And I feel like that was the moment when Fat Shark said, okay, we're done with this. Yep. And so those facts all add up. And that's consistent with what Greg told me as well, that they had already sort of separated from HD0. And then they were like, well, what do we do now? And then along comes walksnail with this new product. And it was like, okay, let's do this. But walksnail is not walksnail. Who is walksnail? Yeah, you want to touch on that now, Blunty?
Well, I was going to say we could either do that, or we could look at at least what walksnail has stated.
Okay, let's go that direction. Okay, the question of who is walksnail and what's their relationship to caddx we'll save. Go ahead.
Yeah, because my thought was like, yeah, so we showed Fat Shark and walksnail are officially partners, and today you sent an email to Alan Evans.
I did.
At Red Cat, and asked him some questions so we could get some clarity.
Fat Shark.
And I feel like
Fat Shark.
Fat Shark. Yeah.
Alan Evans is the
Red
VP
Cat.
of Fat Shark. I mean, I don't know if his position. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
But yeah, so you asked him some of these questions directly. We just wanted to make sure we got clarity on how they were working, and I think this answers some questions for people. So Fat Shark is manufacturing the goggles essentially. They're using the same contract manufacturer. Basically, we wanted to know, are they doing the manufacturing, or is some other company doing it to just give them the design, right? And they're saying, no, we're using the same contract manufacturer. The parts are coming from other places, but it'll be the same idea. Where it's all quality control and they do all the stuff in their warehouse that they've been using for a while, the same contract manufacturer. However, one thing to note is they're being very clear. The VRX board is manufactured by Walksnail and delivered to them. So they do final testing and assembled in the headset.
So very straightforward answer. And what I wondered about that is, like, Fat Shark is known for their manufacturing and their QC. Some would roll their eyes at that, because there have been some QC issues people have had, like with the HDMI board recently. But in general, that's something that they know how to do. So Fat Shark, Alan is very clear that they are manufacturing the goggle. So good.
Yeah. And then
next up.
I was going to say. Yeah, so also in that, you basically asked him directly about the DJI question. Essentially you said, Fat Shark and Walksnail have both stated the system's not DJI. Everybody's saying it's not DJI. There's no hardware. There's no code. There's all kinds of things. But as you point out, a lot of things look identical. The low power mode, the latency, the bit rate, same power levels, like all this stuff is basically identical across the systems. And what happens if DJI goes to take legal action against Walksnail and Fat Shark? And then there's suddenly not a partner access to Fat Shark. They can't make the system anymore, right? What happens to that risk? What is their response to that, right?
Mm-hmm. And Alan's response, he wanted to break. I realized I baked a lot of sort of hypotheticals in there. He sort of broke it apart. He said that the similarities between DJI and the Fat Shark system are due to the customer base being familiar with DJI. Matching what they do makes a transition to our system easy and makes switching easier. Blunty, I think we should respond to some of these, but I'm going to just read them off before we start responding.
Sure.
There are several digital systems from other manufacturers aside from DJI. DJI's advantage is that they moved their tech to an ASIC rather than FPGA. DJI does not have an exclusive on digital technology. In fact, most use traditional chipsets like for Wi-Fi and encodings like H.265, which are industry standards. DJI's market barrier was their excellent execution and the price structure of an ASIC. There is no legal risk to end customers if a lawsuit or otherwise occurs. The only complication would be the legal right for Fat Shark or Walksnail to sell more products. Everything we make stands alone and would work forever. There's generally more risk from small companies going bankrupt and service stopping than there is from this type of legal action. And there is a big difference between illegal activity or starting from a reference. Greg likes to ask, if Elon Musk wanted an FPV system, how long would it take for... Wow. Are you back? Blunty, are you back? Blunty, hello, I think I'm back. How are we doing? Blunty, say hello. Oh, I'm not back in Discord yet. I can see you. We're back. We're back. Give me 1 second, folks. I rebooted the router. Let's see if I can get Discord to come back. Blunty, I see you, but I don't hear you. Do you hear me? No. Hang on a second. Let me restart Discord. Whee!
Whoa.
There you are, Blunty.
All right, we did it.
I hear two of you. Mute the wrong one.
Hey.
Hey, guys. What can I say? When you're doing hard journalism, sometimes they don't want you to... No, it's probably just my router was messed up. Let's continue. I apologize for the delay, and I rebooted my router, so hopefully that won't happen again.
All right.
Blunty, I was going to say, let's go back to number one. Many of the similarities are due to our customer base being familiar with DJI. Matching what they do makes a transition to our system easy and makes switching easier. What is your initial reaction to that? Or at least...
So I've been thinking about this for a long time. I mean, this is the same thing we heard essentially from Walksnail. Walksnail said the similar statement, which is that I know it looks the same, but we made it the same because it's easier. And I have two opinions about this.
Yes.
One is that Occam's razor says that's not true, and you just copied the system. Okay, right? The easiest solution is the normal solution, and you probably just copied the system. You didn't match every single menu item to be identical. You matched every UI element. You changed everything to be perfectly the same. That seems a little crazy. However, on the other hand, let's say you're building an SoC-based or even an ASIC-based, depending on what they were able to get, right? Some kind of system like that, and then you need to make sure users know how to use it. The best thing you could possibly do for user education and support purposes, like to lower your amount of support and education required, to raise the amount of tutorials that are already available. Anybody could Google a DJI goggle tutorial and know exactly how your goggle works. So like as crazy it is to think that, I do think like there is some percentage chance that they did that because it gets rid of all the possibilities of someone needing to worry. Because if you think about it, right, if they did clone it, you could change all the UI elements. You could rename everything to make it not match. But it's way easier to train people and to know how everything works if you do that.
That's a good argument. I appreciate that argument because I wouldn't have come up with that, and it's valid. But here's what stands out to me. There are some UI elements they redid, like the menu. The menu is a completely new interface. It has the same options that we're familiar with, like focus mode and low latency and so forth. But it's a completely new menu. Right? That feels like the kind of thing you would do if you were rewriting an interface, but you wanted to maintain backwards compatibility. But then, like, the low power mode, it looks like the exact same dialog box. The fact that there are some UI elements that seem identical, you wouldn't recreate the exact same dialog box. And so I absolutely understand why people are and saying, like, this has to have some DJI stuff in it. So that question number one, that we just did this the same as DJI because people are familiar with it, like, that feels not entirely consistent with what we saw in the goggles. All right?
Yeah.
The other one that jumped out to me was the one about legal risk to end customers, because what he said is there's no legal risk to end customers. You're right. DJI is not going to sue you for buying a product. Correct.
Yeah.
And only risk is that we would not be able to sell more product. Well, that's a kind of a big deal.
I mean, that's what you were asking. I mean, I think he missed the intention of the question. You weren't asking if somebody's going to get sued for owning the goggle. You were asking if they're going to get sued and you can't buy more shit. You know what I mean?
The fact that I still have, your product, if I break it and need a repair, which I will do because this is FPV, the fact that I can't buy more. And specifically, I think this is a risk to people who are buying today, because, like, if this was some kind of thing that it posed a legal risk from DJI, then, then DJI could. What if DJI sued Walksnail tomorrow and said you stole our IP, and they somehow put Walksnail out of business? Everybody who bought the goggles today can't buy any more stuff in the future. Well, you're boned. And I'm not saying that that's likely or anything, but I'm saying that would be the thing that's the thing that the people who are not putting down $600 for their pre-order might be thinking. And that sort of,
Absolutely.
Let's see, Blunty. Number 4. They're claiming basically that they created the system from scratch by looking at what DJI was doing and sort of reverse engineering and inferring. That's a thing that does happen. I've heard people say that it's implausible that it did happen. Well, I don't know if we can really judge that. All right.
Sure, but continuing. It does seem like they're implying heavily that is what happened.
Yes. Right? Next question that I asked, just to recap for people who got distracted because my internet glitched. These are questions that I asked today to Alan Everson.
Alan Evans.
Evans, thank you. I apologize, Alan. I'm bad. I'm a bad person. I don't know names. Alan Evans, the vice president at Fat Shark. Go ahead, Blunty.
Is Fat Shark manufacturing off-brand goggles for sale by third parties? So is a third party manufacturing Fat Shark goggles for Fat Shark to sell? Fat Shark has traditionally been strong on manufacturing QC, so the question of who is manufacturing is relevant to customers. And here he kind of reiterates sort of what the first part was, which is Fat Shark has done OEM work, what you call third-party manufacturing for customers in the past. Very notably, we OEM'd headsets for Horizon Hobbies, and we used our Recon platform to OEM headsets for educational partners. We're open to OEMs, but we do not currently have any OEM contracts for Avatar HD-based headsets. So I think that is interesting. Along with the next question, I think maybe we should put him as a combo. So let's show the next one as well.
And I should say, in this one, I ask, and I say, Drew mentioned that there were 3 systems in existence, and they were all at Rampage, and that is incorrect. And I want to make sure everybody catches that. Alan corrects me that there were only 3 systems in the United States. I don't want people to see this question, get the wrong information, and not get the correction. Go ahead, Blunty.
Yeah, so there's only 3 systems in the US. Most of the systems are in China being tested and updated regularly. We expect firmware to be ready, but maybe feature incomplete in time for June. Mm-hmm. There will always be some bugs that occur in uncommon situations after launch, and we plan on aggressively supporting and updating it as they are discovered. So I think that's interesting. Basically, they're saying they're not manufacturing OEM Avatar HD based goggles at this point. So they're designing the goggle that they have. And they're also saying that they're planning to release this thing by June. Some of it may be feature incomplete, but they expect it to be ready.
Okay. Going back to this question, the reason I asked this question, in case it wasn't obvious, is that we've got these Avatar goggles from Walksnail, and it's like, well, is Walksnail making the Avatar goggles, or is Fat Shark making the goggles and Walksnail is reselling them as Avatar goggles? And if that's true, how is Fat Shark okay with this? And Alan said they do not have any OEM contracts for Avatar HD, so then...
Seems like, yeah. I'm trying to find the other comment. Wasn't there one more comment about they sent a shell? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think he's... that you don't seem to have screenshotted that one.
That's what I'm trying to double check real quick.
Yeah. So there's some questions coming up in the chat about the relationship between caddx and walksnail, and we will get that as well. Don't worry. We will get to that as well.
Here we go. I got it.
Okay.
I'm going to put that in that imager album if you just refresh it.
Okay. I'll just refresh the album there.
Could be at the bottom.
Yep. I'm refreshing. Here we go. We got one more. Is the Avatar goggle shown on Walksnail and Flywoo's site the same goggle being sold as the Fat Shark Dominator digital FPV system? Are these systems compatible? Are they the same product in a different color shell? Are they made in the same line, etc.? And Alan said, for launch, the Fat Shark Dominator is the only headset that we expect to be available. The design is patented by Fat Shark. The images accidentally posted on the Walksnail site are images from a pre-painted unit. We sent them for collaborative development. We expect several goggles using Avatar HD to emerge over time. But presumably the Fat Shark Dominator goggle design is patented and created by Fat Shark. And I will say the reason I firmly believe that Fat Shark made this goggle is that the SD card slot is right in the middle of your eyes. Exactly where Fat Shark, the exact same ridiculous location where Fat Shark has always put the SD card slot. Everybody else puts it on the outside of the goggle, obviously. And Fat Shark puts it right here. And that's where it is on the Dominators. And so I 1000% believe that Greg French designed those goggles, because no one else would have done that.
That's very fair.
Okay.
Very fair.
That's what I would say.
So
go ahead.
I think that kind of puts some paint on the situation, because everybody saw Walksnail's website go up, and then there were black goggles available, and then everybody was like, "What's going on with that?" And then Flywoo posted the advertisement on their website, which was for the black Avatar goggles, and it seems like the case is that those were test goggles that are not in production. So those will not be sold as that goggle. They'll be sold as some similar goggle later, because Fat Shark is saying they have the patent to make that goggle, and they're not producing it.
Right. Or there'll be another goggle with the Avatar HD system in it that is not a Fat Shark goggle. So the relationship
but it won't be that black goggle that they're showing for pre-order. That's what I mean, which I think is odd.
Well, I mean, if they took pre-orders, it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Because Flywoo's taking reserves for $1 right now. So basically you reserve a spot to buy the goggle later, but that's not even the goggle you'll get, right?
But if you told me that Fat Shark gave intellectual property to a Chinese company, and then that Chinese company took that IP and did something with it that Fat Shark didn't think they should do, I would be amazed. Are we back? Please be back. Wow, this is amazing. Amazing. Blunty's not back. Blunty, are you back? Come back, Blunty. Guys, I have no idea what's going on. We do live streams every week and it's fine. I have no idea what's going on. Blunty, where are you, friend? Alrighty. Now Blunty's done. Well, I'm stable. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. We got to get Blunty back as well. We had issues since before this started. Blunty. He's still sending. Let me try and refresh the window. Hold on. Properties. Properties. Can I just turn the source off and on again? Can I switch scenes? Blunty, can you resend? Can you restart your send? No, it has nothing to do with the number of people watching. That's entirely a YouTube thing. Sorry, guys. Sit tight. No, Blunty, it's you. No, you're there. Okay, I see. How can I reload the file? How can I reload the source, Blunty? That's freaking amazing. Copy. How about I copy paste the source? All right. Wow, amazing. If it's not one thing, it's another. Hang on. Let's see what it'll take to get Blunty back. What if I do this? There you are.
Hey,
there.
I saw
I got you.
Okay.
Okay. Let's pick up where we left off and keep moving. Okay, Blunty. So that's the email to Alan. We have a lot more links here in the show notes, but I fear that we're already almost an hour in. Maybe we should try to speed this up. Where should we go from here?
Well, okay. So everybody immediately after finding out about walksnail, everybody was like, "Hey, man, why do I keep finding walksnail logos and walksnail information in caddx? What's going on with that? I don't understand." So everybody started doing some digging. and all around the internet we got sources from different locations and all kinds of different stuff. So one of the things we got was we got some trademark filings. We got a business registration from Walksnail. So Walksnail got business registered on May the 11th, 2022. And I actually had another guy who is around sometimes, Sam Axis. He went, and the next link you have there is another lookup that he was able to do. If you pop back in and then go down to the next link, the company history lookup is the next one.
Company history lookup. Got it.
And this is actually from having to register with a Hong Kong ID or like with another ID. And he still was able to only find one registration ever for Walksnail technology. So it seems like, as far as Walksnail is concerned, they just created Walksnail as a company. However, if you look back, the next link I have there is a whole bunch of logos. And then we also have a bunch of other information that's linking them together that basically says that, like, hey, this sure does seem like caddx. And you go back and look and you find out that caddx and caddx US's logos were a snail. And then also
here's
these
the caddx
walksnail
peanut with the walksnail logo on it.
Yeah, so all the caddx peanuts that got sold had the walksnail logos. A lot of the vistas have been being sold with walksnail logos on them. You can see in the top right corner, there's even a walksnail brand on that little image there. So it turns out they've been selling walksnail for a while. It just hasn't been a company. It's been a brand under caddx. Is certainly what it seems like.
And one of the things I saw was that the phone number on the Walksnail website was the same phone number on LinkedIn for Ivy Xiang, a well-known caddx sales rep. So we don't know the exact relationship between Walksnail and caddx, but Walksnail and caddx are clearly closely related in some way, which leads people to wonder if DJI is involved, since DJI has a close relationship with caddx. And that brings us to the next question. Did caddx design the original DJI FPV system? Did caddx somehow hire somebody to make a new system for them that is a copy of the DJI system? Did caddx hire, this was posed on my comment section by Ryan Quellet, did a bunch of DJI engineers get fired or quit, and maybe some of them took some stuff with them on the way out the door, or maybe they just remembered what they did, and they went to work for caddx and worked on reverse engineering this system? What is the relationship between DJI, caddx, and Walksnail?
Right. And so far, obviously, like we talked about, they've all been denying the DJI links. But something interesting here, the first link we have on this section, Walksnail actually posted some comments here. So a user, John Anthony, posted, and I got this by DMs from a couple people, and then he posted this publicly. Basically, he said from some back-end sources, and this is kind of how I heard it as well, from some back-end sources, a bunch of people had this narrative. And we're just going to give you this narrative, but we're not saying this narrative is true. We're just providing the narrative. Right?
I specifically disagree with a couple points in here, but go ahead.
Right, but basically the idea is that the quick picture here is that the guy originally behind caddx US, that did security cameras and was in camera industry for a while and links like that, had technology that he was working on and developing for a DJI FPV system. But they didn't have any way to bring it to market because they didn't have millions of dollars, they didn't have backing, they didn't have the production lines and all that stuff. So they took it to DJI and they said, hey, DJI, either, we don't know, hire somebody or take this idea, build it into something, and then, credit us and then kick us in at some point, right? Eventually, maybe down the line, and, give us whatever for whatever and possibly hire some of our people. We don't really know how all that stuff worked. But the idea behind it would have been that because of all this happening, caddx ended up getting the partnership with DJI to make or to work with and sell the VTXs and the air units and all that stuff. And then basically, Fat Shark came along and saw that this system was being developed by Walksnail, or caddx, who decided to basically redevelop the system on their own. They said, we already knew how to do this. We had some engineers that could handle this. So we took that information and developed a sister partner project for that alongside. And then Fat Shark came in and saw that and wanted to build it. So we created a new company called Walksnail. We put the idea under that Walksnail company, and then we worked with Fat Shark to build this. That's kind of the narrative that's presented. What I think is interesting is if you scroll down, Walksnail actually replied to this and said that this is, remember, this is Chinese, somebody originally speaking Chinese who's talking in English, but says, our correct half points, not all the details. Walksnail and caddx FPV were used, all belong to caddx US before. So basically caddx US stemmed caddx FPV and walksnail. caddx US was security system enterprise, which we know has separated to 2 brand already. So what I think is interesting is they comment that like part of that is correct, but also if you read that as part of that is correct, 4 of those 8 points have nothing to do with caddx developing the DJI system originally. Right, so if you take that as its word even, it doesn't mean that they're saying it's true. It's just interesting that they decided to put the comment on that to say like, hey, some of this is true. And I definitely think that's thrown some wrenches in the works for people. Like, why would they even claim this if it wasn't, you know what I mean? It's just weird for them to comment.
Yeah. The walksnail page has been pretty active actually. And it's interesting. The more you say and the more specifically you speak, the more likely you are to get caught if you're lying. And so oftentimes people who are lying don't say it very much and they stick to a script. And the walksnail Facebook page has been super active and super vocal, which is, you know, doesn't necessarily mean you're not lying, but it does sort of tip the needle a little bit for me until they get caught in a mistruth or something. Some people are pointing out that there is a sales manager at DJI who has registered the trademarks for caddx US and walksnail. And they say this is conclusive news that DJI owns caddx, and this is actually a secret plan by DJI to do various things. No, everybody has their own ideas. Thoughts about that?
Yeah. What we know is that someone with the same name that filed the trademarks also works at DJI as a lawyer, or worked at DJI as a lawyer and now works in the US from what I've heard.
And specifically, and I haven't verified this, works in like a little incubator group at DJI, which people think, okay, it was an incubator group. They created caddx, caddx USA, caddx
so
FPV.
I would assume a lawyer would represent more than an incubator group, but I don't know how that works.
So I would say that even in the like the worst case scenario, you might argue that this person helped caddx and walksnail register their trademarks on behalf of DJI. We know that caddx was working with DJI 2 years ago, or at least had relationships with them. And maybe DJI said, well, you know, caddx is going to help with the Vista, and we're going to register these trademarks for you, make it easy. That doesn't mean that today, 2 years later, that relationship is exactly the same as it was 2 years ago. And I firmly believe, as firmly as I can, based on the evidence that I've got, that at this point, DJI is not participating in this either tacitly, explicitly, behind the scenes, that this has been done. caddx has done this to DJI, and DJI did not okay this and is not like approving of this, is my belief.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly what I've heard on the back end. That's what I've heard, you know, from the unsourceable locations and from people who say they have inside knowledge and stuff. Definitely everybody says that DJI is running around like they don't know what's going on. If anybody knows, it's a few people inside of DJI that are aware of this, and that, they're kind of trying to figure out what to do with it, if that information is accurate. So I don't, again, like I think like you addressed a little bit, like when you're lying about something, like you just shut up. Like you don't make public statements about not being related and having no chips, right? Because no common code. And
walksnail said that. We didn't quote that yet. Yeah. You're referencing the walksnail said on Facebook, there is no DJI code in these goggles. There's no DJI hardware in these goggles. That is a bold statement, because you know people are going to rip the goggles open the day they get them and try and figure out if that's true. And Junus of the Margarine Project said, you get me on a screen share and you plug these goggles into your USB and we'll gut them, we'll root them, and we'll figure out what's what. Or he didn't say, I'm being a little bit exaggerating.
I think that's going to happen no matter what. As soon as anybody gets these, like we now have a group that's doing this DJI work. People are going to rip into these. Devil says the same thing in chat.
Yeah,
you know? I can't wait to rip the firmware out of it.
So if they're lying,
going to happen.
If there are DJI chips in here, we'll find out. Yeah. And if there's DJI firmware in here, we'll find out.
Yeah.
So for them to say that, sorry, I keep interrupting you. For them to say that there isn't when they know that we're going to find out, suggests maybe they're telling the truth. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, the other thing June has mentioned is that when you hook a P1 chip up, it talks DJI. Like it responds DJI. Like there's little things that come out of it that are like, yes, this is a DJI device. We're responding with DJI commands, and this is baked in DJI. So if they were somehow using the same chip, you'll know as soon as you talk to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think they're that bold, but maybe they are to lie directly. But I just think there's a lot of lying going on if there's lying going on. That's what I would say.
So let's talk about the third point, and I think close to the final point before we give our conclusions, which is let's hypothesize that somehow caddx has got this code, whether they made it themselves, whether an engineer carried it out the door from DJI, however they got it, they've got this code. It has a lot of similarities to DJI, but the real question is, up until now, everybody has said that digital HD FPV links are extremely difficult. DJI did it because they have billions of dollars in custom ASICs, and HC0 did it, and it's okay. It's pretty good. It's got its benefits, so then how did frickin' caddx do it? And how are they doing it without these custom ASICs that are so expensive? And that's the only reason that DJI can do this, is this custom silicon that costs millions of dollars. Well, it turns out that may not be true.
Yeah, so unfortunately, to bust some people's bubble, I think some people think it's a little more special than it is. Madstech, Ian Lewis, wrote up a great article about both the history. This is a good article about the history of DJI and where they came from. So basically, we talked about occusync before. Occusync 2 was actually just an SoC off the shelf. Occusync 2 was something you could buy off the shelf from Leadcore. The company Leadcore, it was a Leadcore 1860. And that's how they ran occusync 2. That's how they, I believe, still run occusync 2 and devices that run occusync 2. However, suddenly, when the DJI FPV system came out, we got the P1 chip, and that broke us into occusync 3. That's when the low latency happened. That's when some other changes happened, and kind of did all the improvements to the system. And then, so continuing on from that, all the new stuff got P1 chips, or an S1 chip was like a shrunk down version of a P1 chip that still does occusync 3. So that's kind of interesting because, they went from a Leadcore solution off the shelf, or basically off the shelf, to a custom device solution that seems like it was slimmed down and made for DJI.
Yeah.
However, based on that information and some more information that was discovered, Ian wrote another article specifically about the P1 and S1, diving into that a little more deeply. And, basically his title says it all. It's not all that. Basically, it looks like the Leadcore chipset they used, the original Leadcore 1860, was used to develop into the P1. So they just took the Leadcore, and presumably, we don't know this for sure, but from what the backend looks like, they took the Leadcore idea, the SoC, and then just custom built that SoC for DJI. So it's basically a copy of Leadcore's architecture. It's got many of the same core setups, the DSP setup, a lot of the other things, but it's missing a couple pieces that would both make it cheaper and easier to mass produce. And it seems like the likelihood is that this isn't really that hard to do. And as Greg said, or as Alan says in that email that we looked at, it was just timing. It was, hey, they were working with Leadcore at the right time. They were already using SoC. They had developed this occusync technology. And then they got this opportunity to build this P1 chip with Leadcore and then get them in front of the market with this low latency version of their system, the dual band, all the stuff that we saw with occusync 3.
So, and of course, I'm not an expert on lead cores and P1s and ASICs, but I've also been sort of talking to people who I think know a thing or two, and they have said the same. In fact, I explicitly asked a developer who I will allow to remain anonymous if they wish to be, if someone had the DJI code base, could they run the code? Could they adapt the code to run on like a lead core chip? And he was like, yeah, you could probably do that. And it's interesting because I'll speak for myself, but I know I'm not alone here, have thought of what DJI does with their low latency FPV link as being something that was extremely expensive to develop, and that they have this custom chip that only they have, that they developed in-house, and it was extremely expensive, but they have a lot of money and they could do it. And it's you couldn't just reverse engineer that and do it at home. And what I'm hearing is that that's actually not true, that DJI was able to do it first because they're very good at what they do and they're very smart and have a lot of good engineers. But once DJI did it, it was more possible for someone to come along and go, oh, I see what you did there. And that would especially be true if that person used to be a DJI dev or maybe had some code that they took with them. Although I should be clear that it would be reckless and irresponsible to suggest that someone had committed a crime when there's no evidence of that. But that certainly is a thing that happens in the world and would help to explain how this might have been done faster than it would otherwise have been done.
Yeah, it seems like one of the things to remember is that like the lead core and all this stuff happened. I think that lead core, the 1860 was like 2017. P1 was like 2019 or 2020. So I think 2019 because that was DJI FPV system, right? So if you consider the time frame there, that's at least 2 years, almost 3 years. And at the time, they were likely using something that was designed around maybe not the state of the art, maybe close to the state of the art or some of the art of partnership with, because they were working with lead core. So if you consider like all the 5G radios that are out there and all the LTE systems that are out there and all the other companies that are doing this SoC work and stuff, it does seem like there's a good opportunity for, even if it's not lead core, for somebody else to implement a system that's very similar to this, or again, to do that on a lead core or similar thing.
The analogy that I'll make, and then I'm going to take a couple questions that I'm seeing in the chat, but the analogy that I'll make is that there is a period of time where something technologically difficult is essentially impossible, and everyone works hard to do it. And then there is a period of time where someone has done it, but it's still very difficult. And then there is a period of critical mass where suddenly it becomes much easier, in large part due to the work of the people who broke that sort of barrier, you know. And maybe we just reached that point where suddenly it was possible for someone to build this system more easily than it had been before. So one of the questions that's being asked in the Discord is, what does this mean for the DJI system that we're using today? And I think there's an interesting story that you could tell about why this move has been made. Because if I'm right that DJI is not participating in this and caddx has essentially stabbed DJI in the back by deciding to compete with them, then I think that would mean that DJI, I don't see why DJI would continue to give caddx air units and vistas anymore. And anybody who's getting, and DJI has stopped, quote unquote, stopped making them, although they still sell them through caddx. So does this mean that caddx is all in on this new avatar system? If caddx can make units that are compatible, could caddx make units that are compatible with the old system? We don't know, but I think those are valid questions to ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have an answer for that, but I would, if I was, I think the next 6 months will be very interesting to see what happens to the current DJI FPV system, because the DJI V3 goggle, the quote-unquote V3 goggle, which we now hear they're going to call the V2, it's coming. It exists and it's coming. I'm sure of that. And when that happens, well, the plan was going to be that caddx would keep making the vistas and the air units that we all use, and DJI would move on. But now that caddx has done, walksnail caddx has done this with the avatar, I don't see why. It seems like DJI would be like, okay, well, good luck competing with us. We're not giving you hardware anymore.
Yeah, the question is caddx the same as walksnail to DJI? And does DJI care that much about this happening? Because they're looking at releasing a V3 and an occusync 3 air unit that we know is coming, most likely.
Maybe DJI won't care, and they'll be like, yeah, we'll keep selling them. Who gives a shit? Have fun with your
we've got
FPV
a better
market,
thing coming. We've got dual, I don't know. It's not clear. Also, I guess what we don't know, something else to consider, did you get any indication of whether these were dual band goggles?
No technical details. It seemed like Greg didn't know a lot of the technical details, which is consistent with him only really being interested in the goggles. Although, I mean,
it makes sense to me. We saw similar latency and information. It seems likely to me that it's single band, and it's the same idea, the 5.8 gigahertz that we're running currently on DJI FPV.
I would not be surprised.
If that's the case, then DJI will, I'm sure, be happy to release an occusync 3 set. And the occusync 3 set will have dual band, just like the DJI FPV system, and work with V2 and V3 goggles, or maybe just V3 goggles whenever those release. I feel like they're going to be just happy enough to do that and not really worry about this. But who are they going to continue to produce air units and vistas? Would they have before this? As James T points out in a super chat, there's still RunCam. RunCam is still there, right? So RunCam still could make links, RunCam links, which are vistas. And they're just getting those from DJI anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
So, okay. I think we're coming to the end. The question that then we have to address, Blunty, is should you buy them? Oh, there's one more. Somebody said, are Avatar and Dominators compatible? The Dominator is a goggle from Fat Shark that has the Avatar HD chipset system in it, is how Fat Shark is framing it. And there will be other goggles with the Avatar system in them, and presumably they will all be cross-compatible with the same VTXs. It's a whole nother ecosystem. There is currently no indication that that will be cross-compatible with the DJI system that we use, but we don't know. Should you pre-order now for $700? Blunty?
No.
Tell me why you think that.
No Planet is what I pre-ordered for $700. We haven't seen anything that's worth pre-ordering for. We've seen a set of goggles with what looks like a buggy connection. We got a conversation from the owner of the company who came, or the CEO of the company, who came and told us that he doesn't know all the specs and they'll release them in a little while. It didn't tell us the partners until they seemed like they were pushed or they were waiting 3 days for no reason. Like, I don't know. All the things here say no. Do not order this. This is no Planet where you would ever pre-order these goggles.
I will say that I talked to some people at Rampage who were extremely excited by this system and were happy that they had slapped their money down. And I get that. Like I said at the beginning of this, over an hour ago, this is in many ways the goggle that we all wanted the next DJI goggle to be. It is from Fat Shark and caddx. I can tell you that walksnail is in contact with an ExpressLRS developer talking about the backpack system. The ExpressLRS developer reached out to walksnail and were like, hey, you want to do an ExpressLRS backpack? And walksnail was right there and was like, yeah, let's do it, bruh. What do we need to do? That is a kind of responsiveness that we are used to from HD0, it has to be said, and that we are not used to from DJI. And frankly, we're not really that used to it from Fat Shark either, but hey.
Right.
So there are many things about this system that people are excited about. And for people who want to bet on it, they're happy to put their money down and be first in line to try it out. But if what I was looking for was, like, I just want a goggle, and I want to use it, and I want to know that it's going to work and be good like a year from now, especially given the unfinished state that the firmware was in, to say a month from now that's going to be stable and solid and ready for me to use and performing at its best, I would like wait for round 2, personally.
Yeah, this may be the best thing since sliced bread. They may be working with everybody. They may be implementing all the things they say. They may have full canvas in 2 months. They may release with very little bugs. It may be great. But there's no indication of that. The indication is that we got maybe some of that stuff coming down the pipe, but we've got so little information out of the gate in a test. It seems like this is, I don't know. To me, this seems rushed. Like they set a date.
Yes.
To me, this seems like they set a date for Rampage. We've got to show this at Rampage. We're going to show this at Rampage, and they just showed.
Well, maybe they wanted to jump the gun on the HD0 goggles. I mean, I don't know that.
Sure.
But...
I mean that's also. I mean, or the V3 that we think are coming, right? The DJI V3 that are coming.
Yeah.
But I think, like, to me, they set a date at Rampage to show this, and they set a goal at the company for revenue projections and all this stuff to get it out by a date. And that's why they're sticking to the date. And I don't feel confident that they're sticking to the date because they think it's ready to release then. I feel confident they're sticking to the date because they need to release it. Like, they need to have it out.
It feels like that.
June is the end of a quarter, right?
Oh, good point. All righty. That is our take on these goggles. Did we touch on all the points?
I think we didn't look at really Walksnail's comments, but I don't know that we need to go in that. Walksnail made a lot of comments on their own. They've, we saw some stuff where they commented on GitHub a while back, like they were caddx and stuff. But just in general, I think we pretty much covered all the pieces.
Okay.
Does anybody in chat maybe take like a second and just make sure there's no like outstanding questions they missed? Does anybody in chat have anything like that?
While they do that, I will summarize what I think the situation is based on all the research I've done and all the talking. I believe that caddx/walksnail, I don't know the relationship between them. Like, is walksnail the engineering, and then they came to caddx and were like, hey, you want to be partners? It feels like walksnail is the one really talking and that caddx just didn't have this deep of an engineering bench, you know, to do this. If you look, when has caddx ever made a product like this before? They haven't. I don't think they had the engineering depth. So maybe walksnail is the engineers. Anyway, walksnail came to caddx. Caddx made this system. Yeah.
I don't know that I buy that. I think caddx created walksnail because they found engineers.
That's consistent with what I'm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's consistent with what I'm saying.
I don't think walksnail came in. I think like caddx was like, hey, we need to use this brand we have and build a company so that we can.
No, no. Walksnail came. The walksnail brand came from caddx. The engineering came to caddx from somewhere else.
Yeah.
They helped them make this system. I would bet that there's, if not actual DJI code in there, then at least DJI mindshare, that people who were intimately familiar with the DJI system helped build this. Because I would bet that it's not purely reverse engineered, but I don't have any proof for that. That DJI is not participating, that caddx/walksnail came to Fat Shark after the HD0 fallout when Fat Shark needed a goggle, needed an RF module, and this was the perfect timing, and they went into business and partnered together. Because caddx needs somebody to make a goggle for them. Caddx would not be the best at making a goggle, and Fat Shark is good at that. All the theories about DJI doing this on the fly, on the sly to get around the embargo, I don't buy any of that. I don't think it.
Yeah, I don't think it makes any sense. Yeah.
And I think that Greg was technically telling the truth when he said DJI is not involved. Everybody got on Greg for lying about that. They were like, it's DJI. We can see it's DJI. The more I've talked to people, because no one could conceive of someone getting this tech except that they got it from DJI. But the more I've talked to people over the last 3 or 4 days, the more I've been convinced that, in fact, that's not true.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And anybody who thinks like, I don't know, especially if you think people know stuff that they're not talking about, which as far as I know, that's not the case. But if you think that, like, you could watch like Drew's video or Greg's conversation, like the way they talk about it just seems very candidly like, you know, Drew says in his live stream that he did, DJI, please come work with us. We want more support for the system and we'd love to have your system work with it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't speak for Fat Shark, but that would be really cool if that was to happen. And like, I just don't think you talk that way. You have these streams, you have these conversations, you have all these public outcries and information, and publicly deny something that hard without it being true. Because it's just such a biter. You know, you just, again, you just shut up about stuff like that and let it happen and let people talk, but it is what it is because it doesn't matter, right? That's what I would think. Yeah,
it is I just think I've been so frustrated over the weekend. Like, I understand why people were harsh on Greg, because number one, people he just wasn't telling you something that you wanted to know. And he's super awkward on camera, and that's not his fault. That's just some people are awkward on camera. I think, but they were accusing him of lying, and people were saying, obviously that's DJI, and in some sort of vague mimetic sense, there is DJI ideas in it, but I don't think DJI is actually involved as a corporate entity.
The problem is we got all this clarification after the launch. Like, we got the emails from Alan and we got the clarification from other people like after the launch. What we needed at the original launch was, yes, we're working with a company called Walksnail. That company called Walksnail brought us an HD system. Whether or not it's related to DJI is not uninvolved. If DJI sues us, you know what I mean? Like, all this information could have been presented in front of the place, and then it wouldn't have been a conspiracy. But what it felt like was, hey, we're working with somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, and they're really cool. No, nothing after that. How was the thing after that? Not, this is who it was.
I think that there is, I think that the Walksnail, like the launch of the Walksnail website, I interviewed Greg Thursday afternoon. I put the video together. We published a video Friday morning, and during the interview, they wouldn't say the name Walksnail. Yeah. I was like, you know, he was like, well, our partner wants to. They might want to remain private. We're not sure. And then the morning of the launch, Alan walks up to me with his phone. He's like, "That's the partner." But it wasn't like that's the partner. We decided to tell you. It was like, I guess this effing website just went live, so you may as well know. And it feels like whoever's behind Walksnail is just like, you know what? I think I want my website to go live now. And Fat Shark is like, can we be on the same page?
The problem is that they brought Walksnail VTXs. Everybody would have asked anyway. The camera said Walksnail.
Yeah,
Like, you can't do that.
It's the worst kept secret.
It does not happen like that, right? You can't say like, hey, we have a hidden partner, we're not going to tell you who it is, and then everybody goes and flies your system at a public fucking test at Rampage, and then it writes walksnail on the front of it. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
Like, it's just clueless. It's just clueless. And the Drew comment was the same thing. It was very clueless. Drew got on a live stream and goes, I don't understand what happened. I thought everything was going to be great. We were going to show a beautiful goggle. Everybody's going to be happy about our cool digital system. There's some other option than DJI because everybody hates DJI, and it's all roses. And instead, for some reason, they're confused because everybody thinks it's fishy that you're not revealing information. You don't have specs on your goggles. Your goggles look like they have 18 bugs in them, and they look like a DJI system that you're saying they're not. I don't think it's that hard to understand.
No, I get
why
it.
People are confused, right?
I get it. And what's most fascinating about this to me is that given how sort of weird and shady it all was, the most obvious solution of, well, clearly DJI is just doing this. No, how else could it be done? Actually, like if you told me Friday, like, well, actually what's happening is that caddx did in fact reinvent the system, I'd be like, come on, you're pulling my leg.
Right.
But it certainly looks like that is a plausible, maybe the most plausible explanation, and the one that I personally lean towards today. I got to tell you, Blunty, in the chat, have we missed anything in the chat? I think no one has come up with anything we missed.
I haven't seen any real specific comments we missed.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Blunty, I think it's 7:30. I think we should read the super chats. We just did a rant. I think we should read the super chats and then we should sign off before our stream goes down again, and we should put the HD0 goggles off till next week.
All right.
I mean, I feel like I'm feeling a little wrung out right now.
Yeah, chat's asking about the DJI leaks, so we'll I think we'll do DJI leaks on HD0 goggles next week, unfortunately, because we're already an hour and a half into this thing.
It does not have an RC link, Josh Fisk. It is video only.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it did not. It did not at the time that I was there. Yeah. So here's what I'll say, Blunty. I think that in 6 months to a year, it's going to be very interesting, because I could imagine that in a year, this system has all the bugs shaken out. Walksnail has proven to be extremely connected and communicative with the community, working with the Express LRS devs, giving us canvas mode. And I think we could have two really interesting, really connected FPV systems, HD0 and Walksnail, Fat Shark, whoever. And then where is DJI going to be? I don't know. But if they can get the bugs shaken out and the performance up there, this could be everything we wanted from DJI, in addition to a great link. Right? What we had from DJI was a great link, but not very responsive to the community, not very communicative, and just kind of a great big ship that you're kind of hanging on the side of. And here we've got the potential for a great connectedness we don't know yet, and the potential for a great link we don't know yet. And that's a really tough spot to be in.
Yeah, like you said, I think that, we could either be in a wonderful spot from a while from now, or it could be terrible and they haven't done anything with the system and then it dies, or they get sued by DJI. We really don't know what's going to happen.
We really don't know.
I think the rule is don't pre-order. I wouldn't pre-order this. I would wait to see what happens, and hopefully we all get the system we all want, and then everything will be roses.
I would say if you want to pre-order because you're excited about the potential of the product and you want to be on the ground floor. But don't pre-order because you want a solid set of goggles that are completely usable today. I would absolutely agree with that. Especially because the HD0 goggles are also on the horizon, and they are just as exciting in many ways. And we're going to look at them next week. The announcement about the HD0 goggles. They have some features that the Fat Shark goggles do not have, like HDMI in. They are less polished in some ways, but have even more sort of community input in some other ways. And then, of course, the DJI V3 goggles are coming, and we really don't know what's going to happen with the current DJI FPV system, especially now that the main source of it has apparently thrown mud into DJI's eye. At least some people think it could be seen that way. So it's a very weird time if you're shopping for goggles. Maybe just wait a tiny bit. Yeah. Okay. Uncle Stewie says that's a little disingenuous. You ranted for an hour about the Avatar, but Carl's gear has some published specs and features. No, you're right. Carl, with a C, by the way, not a K. Carl's HD0 goggles have published specs and features. That's, that's interesting. But it's not the same as actual stuff that has happened, which is what we've been talking about. And basically, I'm just exhausted after an hour of emotional discussion. And I just want to be able to be fresh and excited and not just be like, oh, okay, I'm tired, but let's talk about this. So take it as we want to give the HD0 goggles the proper sort of attitude and not just treat them when we're tired. At least
and we've got a DJI leak we're skipping too, so don't worry. We're skipping more DJI news.
Okay, we're also skipping the DJI leaks. So,
yeah.
Okay, let's get the super chats, though. We got a couple super chats. Isaac Mitchell, thanks for a $2 super chat. Crease, thanks for a $10 super chat. By saying they might technically be compatible, the Avatar and the DJI Vista and Air unit. Isn't that an admission that DJI is underneath? No, it is an admission that they are similar enough that they could be made to be compatible. But you can reverse engineer third-party compatible things. That's not impossible.
Yeah.
Mike Speedy FPV, thank you for a £5 super chat. Josh Fisk, thanks for $2. If not DJI, are there plans for RC? Why 6 wires? Yeah, the pinout's the same. That's interesting. The VTX actually has the same pinout, including spots for an S-bus and a ground wire. Maybe there was potential for a controller.
Yeah, I mean, the original Air unit had 8 pins, so it may just be feature as well.
Yeah. If they're reverse engineering or otherwise emulating, copying, cloning, whatever the DJI system, there's no reason to think that they couldn't do a controller, but there is no controller as of today. I wasn't shown one. It wasn't mentioned. I've never heard it mentioned. This guy ADX, thank you for a $5 super chat. Is the HDO2 going to drop in price? I mean, I wouldn't hold my breath. Everything's going up in price these days. If the price has stayed the same, that's actually dropping in price relative to inflation. Wesley
Especially
Reen,
since
thanks.
these don't do analog. I don't
Right.
think so.
They're just not competing.
Yeah.
People in the chat were saying if DJI doesn't sue caddx, then we know they're in on it. I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either. Because there's also clone drones. I don't know that they've sued all these clone drone makers. Like there's a bunch of people who make DJI similar drones with DJI similar features, UIs that look almost identical. I don't know that any of those guys are getting sued either. So
they didn't sue Devil for cracking the system. Someone told me, and I don't know if this is true, but someone told me he was trying to figure out from DJI what their attitude was on this. And he said DJI is really weird about what they do and don't care about. Like DJI, he said, and this is just somebody talking to me on the internet, so it could be untrue. But he said DJI is aware of the Margarine Root project and they don't care. DJI doesn't care if you hack their system. If you hack their system to let you go, beyond line of sight, now there's potentially a legal exposure to DJI and they'll crack down on you. But they don't really care if you hack their system. So it's weird what they do and don't care about. And on some level, maybe they won't care enough to sue, or maybe they'll figure that suing is not the right choice and they're just going to do something mean to caddx in the business world, or who knows. But DJI may appear to do nothing about this, and that doesn't mean anything.
Because also they did block drone hacks, though. So they it's hard to know what they're going to do, right? It's so hard to know.
Mm-hmm. Wesley Reen, thanks for a $20 super chat. Use this to fix the stream. Mouse FPV, thanks for a $2 super chat. Shortly after root access is gained, fishy. There were some questions in the stream about whether this was related to the root hack. I don't think it is, because the root hack only gives you access to the upper level, user level code. This would require access to the RTOS, the core code. Yeah. So the
RTOS is baked. At the factory, from what I understand, on DJI's machines. So DJI bakes with it's like a public-private key exchange that happens on a machine, and there's no way to know that private key because that private key exists at DJI. So there's no way to re-engineer that, essentially, is what I understand.
Yeah. So we don't know that for all we know, the Margarine Root project rooted the RTOS somehow and then went to caddx and was like, look what we got. I mean, we don't know that didn't happen, but
Pretty sure it's not possible, but maybe it is. I think there's like fused or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. There's no reason to believe that this was directly related to the root hack.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Super Deluxe, thanks for $20. Joshua, Boots on the Ground, Bardwell, and it's Occam's Razor Blunty. Great work, you both. I appreciate y'all actually going after this like journalists. Puts tinfoil hat back on. Anthony Short, thanks for a $20 super chat. Good work and thanks. Wes Magyar, thank you for a $2 super chat. I wasn't going to bring this up, but can I say, Wes Magyar's super chat says, remember that leak about the production stop from a month ago? Do you remember a month ago when Blunty and I reported a leak that the production of the Vista and the Air unit would be slowed or delayed, and we speculated on whether this production was ending? And then caddx said, no, we're going to keep producing them. Everything is fine. And we said, what do you mean, caddx? You don't make them in the first place. What do you mean you're going to keep producing them? This is all potentially in a different light now, isn't it?
I don't think it has anything to do with this.
Shut up. Damn you, Blunty. All right, fair enough.
Just being honest, I don't think they're related in one bit, but it could be, but I don't think so.
I would like to live in a world where that leak was DJI saying, we're going to stop this. We're moving on to V3. And then caddx went, oh shit, okay, it's time to pull the trigger on this route on this project we've been working on. And caddx was like, we're going to do this. And we turned out to have been right the whole time. That's the most important thing for me.
I guess we'll find out when the supply dries up all of a sudden.
We'll see. No one will remember. Except me. Corelio FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Does the Fat Shark Dominator user have to go through user account creation and registration? I don't know. That wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, I think that hopefully we'll come with more details when that happens in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah. If it does require, people were saying when you get the goggles, if you have to register them, then that's a sign that DJI is involved and they want your information. But if you don't have to register them, that's good because it means one of the things people object to with the DJI goggles is having to register them. And Fat Sharks have never required that before. Angels in Raver, thanks for a $2 super chat. Will we see an Avatar VRX over HDMI? If why do you say that?
I'm pretty sure they showed in a couple places, but I wasn't able to find the quotes that they were going to do that. But they definitely hinted at that. And it seems like from what Greg's saying, there's no reason they wouldn't produce that. Right. I don't know. If you're a company who makes a VRX and you could make it with HDMI out to put on a goggle that people already own, I think you'll do that. So I don't see any reason why this wouldn't happen.
Walksnail explicitly wants to put this system in many systems, and the Fat Shark Dominator is only one of them. And Alan from Fat Shark seemed to echo that. So it seems like that's a thing that people want, and it's likely that it will happen. Uncle Stewie, thanks for a $10 super chat. Just saying thanks for the news. Son of Flat Top, thanks for a $20 super chat. Is a discussion about the difference between reverse engineering and forward engineering worth considering? I'm not sure I know the difference. Reverse engineering is where you have something and you pick it apart to see how it was done. I don't know about forward engineering. All right. Droop, thank you for 10 Canadian dollars. What are your thoughts on getting the DJI Goggles V2 right now? The thing is, the Goggles V2 exists right now, and if every production of DJI Vista and Air units stopped today, I bet you would still be able to buy them 2 years from now, just because of how gosh darn many there are out there. So
yeah, I bet it'll last for a while. I know people have a lot of them. So.
We have no reason to believe that they will stop being produced, but a worst case scenario would be you buy the goggles today, and tomorrow DJI and caddx stop making the Air units and Vistas. I feel like that's not a terrible investment because it is a stable system. It is a well-performing system. We know what we want from it, and all of this other stuff is very future-looking. It is a gamble. But there is a little bit of risk in buying the DJI V2 goggles right now because we know that the next generation of DJI goggles are coming, and maybe you'll like them better. And we know all this other stuff is coming, and we don't for sure know that the V2 goggles, Air unit, and so forth will be made how much further into the future. Crease, thank you for a $5 super chat. I think when a lot of us say DJI, we mean the underlying protocol and chips. Yeah, I mean, Crease, that's why I think Greg was splitting a little bit of a hair when he said that DJI was not, the system was not DJI. What he meant is that DJI Corporate is not our technical partner. And that, I think, was a true statement. And people accused him of lying and being dishonest because they could see that there was... And Walksnail says there is no DJI silicon and no DJI code in the goggles. And that may also be a true statement, although I think that's a little less likely to be true, but it may still be true. And when people look at it and say it's clearly DJI, why did they fight so hard? Why did they not go, yeah, I know it looks, I know what you mean. They kind of did. But people just wanted to hear that it was DJI. They couldn't believe it. And I think that was wrong. I think they were wrong.
Well, they wanted to hear the thing they should have heard, which is that it was a company related to caddx directly that could be linked that obviously had something to do with the DJI system. Like, it's bullshit. Again, sorry, that really makes me angry because it should not be like that. You can't say that. You can't be kind about it because it's bullshit. Like, you can't, it's not fair. Like when he says, I don't know, when you're saying it's not DJI, you have to know that people are going to do research. You have to know that people know how companies are connected, that they can fucking Google things. Like, it's ignorant. It's arrogant to think that somebody can't do that, and to think that somebody's not going to follow the fucking train down, and that somebody's going to figure it out, and everybody's going to be cool. Thousands of people are going to be cool, and it's not going to be a problem. Nobody's going to talk about it. It's fine. Everything's fine. Like, it's bullshit. It's just arrogant to think, and it's either like closed thinking, or it's just like, we don't care, we're going to do this, or it's ignorance. Like that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I suspect that Greg and Fat Shark and Rotor Riot are not as in charge of this as they would have been with previous launches, and that's a new position. I got the impression that it was up to Walksnail whether Fat Shark talked about Walksnail publicly, and that they had agreed that they wouldn't until Walksnail launched the site.
They're on the camera. That's not how this works.
But
if you're Greg, you say, hey, you're on my camera. What do I do when they ask? Tell me. Let me know. I have a piece of paper, so you could read the fucking paragraph, that I could read them when they look at my camera. Did he have that? No. Did he have any kind of information?
They were unprepared.
No.
They were unprepared, and they didn't think it through.
It's ignorance. It's arrogance or ignorance. That's what I think. Yes.
Maybe it's laziness.
Ignorance.
Could be laziness. Just be like, okay, we're just going to go out there. We're going to sell the goggles. Right? Is laziness? Okay, fair enough. Right. Yeah. Why didn't they ask? Why didn't they see it coming?
You're charging $700 for that's arrogance to me.
Valid. We're getting an extra rant. A bonus rant.
I just don't like. I don't know. I cannot buy the fact that they didn't think about any of this, or if they didn't think about any of this, I think that's horrible for a company that's trying to produce the next generation of the digital goggle. That's what I think.
Yeah. It was a struggle to make that video. I'll talk about my own struggles here for a minute. It was a struggle. No, because I feel a little bit guilty. I shouldn't say guilty because people will take that stronger than I mean it. That like, why wasn't this stuff in that video?
Yeah.
Right. Because these questions came up, and the answer is that, I showed up at Rampage at 1 p.m. And between 1 p.m. and 3 a.m., I had to make the product release video. And literally at 3 a.m., I hit schedule on that video and did nothing, pretty much nothing in between then but work on that video. So I got to fly the goggles. I got like 2 packs on the goggles. I got to see them. I got to sit down with them for like 20 minutes in my room and record that thing. And I was just like, I was scripting the video. I was structuring the video. And I got to sit down with Greg and Alan and interview them. And like, okay, this is the video I'm going to make where I approached it like, I'm going to show the goggles and let people see the goggles and talk about the system. And then all these questions come up. They didn't come up for me until like 3 or 4 days later after the internet blew up. It seems like it would have been obvious if you had your head in the right place and you had months to think about this product release that these questions would come up.
Right. But when you're getting... I'm just going to say, when you're being told that, like you already explained in a call about these goggles, that nothing's wrong, everything's great, they have all these features and everything, just come on and check them out. Like, there's not necessarily a reason to know that I'm going to need to prepare an extra 12 hours of figuring out like how to talk about all this stuff and like what all the other pieces are going to be, and that there's going to be all this bullshit and confusion. And I don't know. I think the timing to me makes sense with what we knew and like what you had to get out. So
yeah. Cell therapy, I'm not trying to protect my business partnership. That's not it at all. You know, my relationship with Rotor Riot is what it is. But if I was scared that saying the truth would hurt my relationship with Rotor Riot, I wouldn't have done this live stream and spent the whole live stream just tearing into this thing, right?
Right.
Like anybody who thought, somebody on Reddit was like, isn't it interesting that Bardwell hasn't posted about this and everybody else has? And they were implying that I was like not going to cover the controversy. It's just like I was at Rotor Riot ripping packs with people. I mean, Rampage. But anybody who thinks that I have in any way been affected or stifled by that relationship, you know, I probably this.
I mean, maybe you could just state for everybody very clearly, because people are crazy. Like, you believe the things you posted in that video and there was not lies for, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why people think all this stuff, but it's just crazy to me that like.
Which things? In the release video?
Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I made the video I wanted to make. I didn't make a video for Rotor Riot. You know what I mean? I didn't make a video for Fat Shark.
No, absolutely. I made the video I wanted to make. Like I've been thinking about this. Now we're going to go extra long, just chatting, you and me. I guess the live stream has 1,200 viewers, so we'll be all right. I did think about that today, and I think that I do approach a video differently. Like, I think about the release of the DJI FPV goggles, and they didn't include me in that release. I didn't get those goggles. I think about the release of the TBS Tango 2. TBS didn't send me one. I wasn't part of the release. And there are some products that I'm not part of the release, and everybody does a cattle call on the embargo date, and I'm like, dear God, thank God I'm not part of that. Wouldn't want to. And then there are products where I'm like, you know what? It bothers me a little bit that I didn't get to be a part of this. And I noticed that I go into some of those reviews, and I definitely am aware of it and try and temper it and be objective, but I go into those reviews maybe with a little bit of a more critical eye. Whereas when in a situation like this, when they're like, there's this big product, do you want to come? Do you want to be a part of the review, the release? Like, I am aware that I am being done a favor by being included and that it benefits me. That video has over 90,000 views. And the last I checked, the ad revenue on that video was about $250. So even though there was no financial incentive, there was no compensation, there is and I put this, by the way, in the pinned comment where I put the disclosure statement. I acknowledge this. So when I approached that video, I had only so much time to work on it. And I'm like, what are the things I need to put in this video? And the things that rose to the top of the list was, what is this goggle like? What are its features? What does it look like? What is it about? And not, what is the effing story behind this? I didn't spend 9 hours on Friday tearing apart the story because I wanted to make the release video. And I thought that the release video was what people wanted to say. But the effect of that was that the video was in some ways softer. Whereas if the video had come out and I hadn't been included in the release, instead of putting something out on Friday, I would have spent all weekend grumbling and digging things up. And then been like, here's the truth. Right. And, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah. So, and those are a response to somebody saying, I'm just trying to protect my business relations. If there was a way in which I was softer on the goggles, it was because I was part of the early release and under pressure to release before the embargo date. And wanting to release at 9 a.m. on Friday.
It wasn't like pressure to like hide bad information or like, you know, whatever. It was pressure to like, hey, I don't have time to look up all this information and find out all this stuff. I need to get a video out for the embargo time.
And the things I chose to focus on were the technical details of the goggle and not the story behind them. And then I came back on Tuesday to do that. So I feel like I'm trying to have it both ways. But there we go. And if I was, anyway. One IFPV, good point. I want to give a shout out. We are wrapping up, I promise. I give a shout out to Madstech Ian Lewis. Is his last name? What's his last name?
Yep, that's correct.
And I want to give a shout out to Chris Rosser as well. I spent all weekend when I had a few spare moments at Rampage following this drama and seeing all kinds of crazy cuckoo wacko fantasy stories which I thought had no basis in fact, even if some of the facts might have turned out to be true. Many of them were completely bogus BS. And Chris Rosser and Ian Lewis both put out, Mads Tech, both put out an incredibly thoughtful and well-researched video on this topic, and I was extremely impressed. I know there were other people who put out videos that I didn't get the chance to watch. Like I know Johnny Five put one out. I'm not saying that no one else did, but I did notice that and Ian especially did a shitload of research on the P1 chip and how it might be possible for someone to implement DJI's tech without the P1 chip, which I think was key to understanding this situation. So kudos to them. Kudos also to Carl at HD Zero. Somebody replied to the video saying, you're talking about how Fat Shark is finally being community focused and this new company's community focused, and Carl has been community focused like nobody's business. And I was like, yes, I give him credit for that. And I just want to say here for the record that I do. Okay. That's it. We're done. Let's get the F out of here. We'll be back for the news. I'll type their names. Chris Rosser on YouTube. Mads Tech, whose name is Ian Lewis in real life, as well. All right, folks.
Also, since it's been almost 2 hours, don't forget to go down there and hit a like button, hit the subscribe button, do some comments on this. We appreciate everybody hanging out through the technical issues that we had earlier in the stream, but I think we're going to get the heck out of here.
Oh, we got to read 2 more super chats that just came in. Crease, thank you for a $2 super chat. Does the VTX pair with the VRX? Did that come up? We were allowed to fly systems that were preset. So the quad, you just plug in the quad, put the goggles on, occasionally power cycle the quad a couple times to get things to settle down and work right, and then fly. Well, you don't know anything about the binding process. We don't know any of the technical details. That's all we got.
I bet it binds like DJI.
It probably binds pretty similar. Uncle Stewie, thanks for... There was a bind button on the goggles. At least I assume it was a bind button. It looked like one. Uncle Stewie, thanks for a $5 super chat. It'll be funny if the DJI V3 turns out to be the Avatar HD in a fatter box style with user data collection. I don't think that's going to happen. I legitimately think caddx has somehow come up with this system and is essentially trying to either compete with DJI or fill the void that DJI is about to leave when they say this FPV market is bogus. We're done with you. I don't know which of those is true. We are out of here, folks. We'll be back next week at 6 p.m. for a normal news. Thanks for sticking with us. Sorry for the technical difficulties. And what an exciting time to be alive.
Yep. Later,
Good
guys.
night, everybody.